guys, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Lindsay and I post true crime and chit chat videos 2 times a week and occasionally post vlog style videos as well as fashion related content as well. So if that's the type of content you're into, make sure to hit that bell button so that you stay notified every time I post. I know it's been a while since I last posted, but I promise I have so much content ideas lined up for you guys, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And also, if my voice sounds a little off today, please don't pay any mind to that because I have caught a bit of a cold. The seasons are changing over here and every time this happens I catch a cold, so yeah, don't pay any mind to that because today we are going to be talking about the murder of a 22-year-old British English teacher who was killed in Japan by a 28-year-old man named Tetsuya Ichihashi. Okay, so Tetsuya Ichihashi was born on January 5th, 1979 in Gifu Prefecture, Japan. He grew up in Gifu and moved to Shiba Prefecture, just east of Tokyo, after his father had been relocated. Speaking of family, Tetsuya was the only child to his two parents. His father was a doctor, whereas his mother was a dentist. So Tetsuya ends up attending Shiba University, where he ends up graduating from the Department of Horticulture in 2005. After graduating though, Tetsuya did not look into getting a job or working. Instead, he lived on a monthly allowance of $920 from his parents. And although not much has been made public about Tetsuya because of Japanese privacy laws, police had described him as a loner who was obsessed with physical fitness, as he went to the gym daily and often cycled for about 25 kilometers. And he was also said to have had an interest in violent manga comics. As well, one more thing to note is that Tetsuya did not have any previous convictions prior to this case, but he was part of an allegation of theft and injury which was handled outside of court. And Tetsuya had also allegedly been in an year-long relationship with a Japanese woman during the time of this killing. Now, rewinding back a bit, in 2007, Tetsuya Ichihashi meets our victim, Lindsay Hawker. Okay, so Lindsay Hawker was born on December 30th, 1984 in Coventry, West Midlands, to her two parents, Bill and Julia Hawker. She was the middle child of 3 daughters and her sisters' names were Lisa and Louise Hawker. Her family was from Brandon, a Warwickshire village outside of Coventry, and Lindsay was schooled in King Henry VIII School in Coventry. As well, she was an alumna of the University of Leeds, where she studied biology and received a first-class honours degree and graduated in 2006. Lindsay was known to her friends and family as popular and outgoing, and although she had a plan to study for a master's degree, she opted to take a year off to teach English in Japan. So then in October of 2006, Lindsay heads over to Japan to teach English at the Kawai branch of the Nova Teaching School in Tokyo, which was Japan's largest conversation school. So then she finds an apartment to live in Shiba for the time being, and she shares this accommodation with 2 other teachers, one from Australia and one from Canada. Now I want to touch base on how Lindsay Hawker and Tetsuya Ichihashi met and their first exchange. So according to an email that Lindsay had sent her boyfriend about Tetsuya Ichihashi, it is said that her and Tetsuya had met at a train station when Lindsay was on the way back from work. So Tetsuya had actually approached her and he had claimed that she was his English teacher and asked her to confirm this. However, Lindsay was very sure that he was not one of her students and she rejected this claim. So then Lindsay ends up getting on her bike and starts cycling home, but Tetsuya is following her. So he starts off walking, then jogging, then running after her. So then eventually when Lindsay ends up back at her apartment, Tetsuya ends up catching up to her and he asks her for a glass of water. So Lindsay had been reluctant at first, but she agreed and let him come inside for a glass of water because she kind of felt bad for him, and she also felt like because she had 2 roommates, he would kind of leave her alone once he saw that there were other people in the apartment and she wasn't alone. Once inside though, Tetsuya ends up taking out a paper and a pen and he ends up drawing a picture of Lindsay and signing it off with his name, his phone number, and his email address. At some point in this exchange, the two had actually agreed to meet at a cafe 4 days later for their first English lesson, which was permitted by the Nova Teaching School. So then on Saturday, March 24th, 2007, Tetsuya Ichihashi and Lindsay Hawker end up meeting up at this cafe for their first English lesson, and this lesson seemingly went well. They spent about an hour or an hour and a half in that cafe. However, around the end of that lesson, Tetsuya ends up telling Lindsay that he actually forgot all his money at home, so he wasn't able to pay her right on the spot. However, he lives nearby, so what he proposed was that she come home with him, get the money, and then she can go home. So then the two end up getting a taxi and head over to Tetsuya's home, but upon arriving, Lindsay asks the taxi driver to wait for her to return so that she can end up going home. However, after around 7 minutes, the taxi driver did end up leaving because it had taken a while and he felt like maybe plans had changed and Lindsay was going to stay longer than anticipated. So then the Nova Teaching School ends up contacting Lindsay's family as well as reporting her as missing at 2:30 p.m. on March 26th after she had failed to teach 2 of her scheduled classes on the 26th and 25th of March. As well, Lindsay's friends had also tried to contact the police earlier. However, the police didn't take it seriously at the time and it wasn't passed through to the proper authorities of the department. So then the investigation ends up beginning at Lindsay's apartment with the police kind of questioning her roommates and seeing if they have any information on where she could be. They end up getting a suspect in mind pretty quickly as they find the sketch that Tetsuya had made with his contact information on it in her apartment, and they also know that she had met him at a coffee shop on the 24th before she went missing. So as Tetsuya Ichihashi was the last to have been known to have seen Lindsay Hawker, 2 officers had been dispatched to his apartment at around 5:40 p.m. that same day. However, the problem was that they weren't allowed into the apartment without proper cause, but Tetsuya's neighbor actually let the police in and let them kind of peek over their balcony. And when they were peeking over the balcony, they saw that there was a bathtub filled with soil, and they could also tell that there was someone moving around in the apartment even though no lights were on. So then I believe at some point they were also made aware of the previous allegations against Tetsuya. So at around 7 p.m. the 2 officers end up calling in for backup as they believe that this could be a potential hostage situation. And within the next hour, 7 more officers arrived at the scene. So then at this point there are 9 officers assembled outside of Tetsuya's apartment, and around 2 hours later Tetsuya ends up leaving the apartment barefoot and wearing a backpack. When he was made aware of the situation around him, he ends up trying to run away, but one of the officers actually grabs a hold of his backpack. However, he is still able to weasel his way through and ends up running away. Now, none of the officers had radios on them, so they weren't able to radio to the people on the ground, telling them that he's on the run. Tetsuya, however, was later found once again. However, this time he was wearing a pair of athletic shoes. And once again, he ran away and got away because he zigzagged through the streets. Now, when looking through the contents of Tetsuya's bag, it just had a bunch of his gym clothes, and police had believed that he was going to take the gym clothes to the gym and wash them there. So upon entering Tetsuya's apartment, they could see that Lindsay's stuff was scattered all around the room. Her naked body was found buried under a mixture of compost soil and sand in a detachable bathtub on his balcony. She had been bound and gagged by plastic ties and scarves, and her right hand was poking out of the soil mixture. And upon analyzing Lindsay's body, there were bruises all along her upper body, indicating that she had been subjected to a prolonged attack. Police had said that the bruises that were left on her face seemed to have been caused by a fist, whereas lesser marks on her upper body seemed to have come from collisions with furniture. Both Lindsay Hawker and Tetsuya Ichihashi have been said to have been familiar with the martial arts. However, Tetsuya is said to have been more experienced as he had a black belt. Now, although Lindsay had been subjected to a prolonged attack, it is believed that Lindsay had ultimately died from strangulation that caused the cartilage in her neck to break. As well, after killing Lindsay, Tetsuya ended up shaving her head, and upon searching his apartment, police did find a few wigs, which caused them to believe that maybe Tetsuya was a cross-dresser, and rumors started circulating that he killed for her hair to turn into a wig for himself to wear. It was also later found that in that compost sand and soil mixture, Tetsuya had also mixed in a substance which was used to compact and decompose waste. So it was believed that he was either waiting to bury Lindsay's body or waiting for it to decompose completely. And one more thing that was found is that Tetsuya had actually bought these materials with 6 visits to a local hardware store on that same day prior to the officers arriving on March 26th. So the next morning, Tetsuya becomes a wanted man in all of Japan. So at this point, there are numerous wanted posters and a bunch of news outlets showcasing his face for potential sightings. However, Tetsuya was nowhere to be found, and in the following weeks, there were barely any sightings reported, and the only ones that were reported ended up leading to dead ends. Police had even went as far as to Photoshop the pictures of Tetsuya and make it so he is wearing different wigs to potentially find him. However, none of this seemed to have helped because Tetsuya seemed to have disappeared and couldn't be found for years. Now, this really upset Lindsay's family because not only did they have to grieve the loss of their daughter, but they also knew that her killer was still somewhere out there and that he kind of got away with it. As well, her family believed that the Japanese police had become very sloppy and lazy with this investigation. So a few months after Lindsay's death, her parents end up traveling to Japan to assist in raising awareness of this case and Tetsuya Ichihashi. Her father Bill even met up with members of the Japanese mafia, the Yakuza, at a bar and gave them 2 whiskey bottles before asking them for their help. As time progressed, the Japanese police found themselves in the spotlight as questions began to be posed as to how 9 officers let 1 man slip away twice. As well, the pictures on the wanted posters of Tetsuya Ichihashi had also been 7 years out of date. This, along with many other factors, caused the Japanese police and Lindsay Hawker's family to argue, and eventually the British media and Japanese media got involved as well. So in terms of Tetsuya's whereabouts, he had actually traveled across most of Japan during the time he was on the run. And just to put this into perspective for you, he was in Aomori, one of the most northern cities in the main island of Japan, and he was also in the southern island of Okinawa while he was on the run. As well, he had lived in a remote island called Oha Island in a concrete bunker at times to remain undetectable as well. After about 1 year on the run, Tetsuya found himself in Osaka, which is 250 miles west of Tokyo. It was during this time that he lived in internet cafes and worked on construction sites to kind of get by. So with the money that he was able to save up, he would basically invest it in himself and in plastic surgery to change up his features so that he could remain undetectable and avoid getting caught by the police. However, he had already kind of changed up his appearance through self-mutilation prior to this. All on his own, he had cut off all of his moles and he had used scissors to cut part of his lower lip off. As well, he sewed a thread through his nose to alter its shape as well. So then in 2009, police are desperate to find Tetsuya Ichihashi, so they go as far as to increase the reward amount for any information that can lead to Tetsuya's arrest from 1 million yen to 10 million yen. And during this time as well, they had released a statement saying that they believed that Tetsuya had gone through plastic surgery and altered his appearance, so they asked for people to be on high alert. Now, this seemed to have worked because in October of 2009, a plastic surgeon in Nagoya had contacted the police and had told them that he believed he had just worked on Tetsuya. The surgeon actually had before and after pictures of Tetsuya that Tetsuya himself had agreed to take that had been provided to the police and later been dispersed to the public. And after seeing these pictures, one of his coworkers at one of the construction sites in Osaka ends up recognizing him. So then Tetsuya ends up making a plan to get out of Osaka as soon as he can and go back to this remote island and hide in one of the bunkers. So then on November 10th, 2009, Tetsuya ends up fleeing to Osaka's ferry port. However, before being able to board the boat, one of the workers had actually recognized him and he had to face multiple officers. And at this point, he knew he was caught. So when they asked him who he was, he actually admitted to who he was and said, "Yes, I am the Tetsuya Ichihashi." And this is when he was formally arrested. So then while in court, Tetsuya Ichihashi actually admits to suffocating Lindsay Hawker, and he says that he had done this to prevent her from screaming when he was raping her. So then on July 21st, 2011, the Shiba District Court ends up sentencing Tetsuya Ichihashi to life in prison. Now, Lindsay's family had actually requested that he get the death penalty. However, the court felt that this would be inappropriate as Tetsuya Ichihashi had no previous convictions and he was only 32, so he could be rehabilitated. Now, one more thing I wanted to mention before ending off this video is that Tetsuya Ichihashi did end up writing a book called Until I Was Arrested, which goes into his side of the story and everything from when he was on the run and all of that. Now, he did end up offering the royalties that this book might earn to Lindsay's family. However, they did reject this idea. But yeah, that basically ends off today's video. What do you guys think about this case? I think this is the prime example of how people take kindness for granted. Let me know if there's any other cases you guys would like for me to cover. And like always, keep shining. I will talk to you guys in my next video.